Hey there, it's louisatannermunson from Feel Good Astrology, and we've got a show. I've invited my good friend Kimberly back, Kimberly Crow from I Am Kimberly Crow. I think that's her her YouTube channel. I'll find out for sure. I know her details are in the description below. But anyway, we're going to be talking about Mars Cazimi from the perspective of it being a bit of a survival story, a place of thrival, if that's a word. You know, the whole Mars cycle. What's it about? How does it come about? And also examine the chart of, when Mars goes Cazimi, and sort of have a look at the impacts that that's going to have in terms of setting up a new cycle. So we're really going to kind of deep dive into it. And also, we're both intuitive astrologers, so I'm pretty sure we're going to chat quite a bit around it. But anyway, let's bring on Kimberly now. Hey, Kimberly, how you doing?
Am I here? I'm like, I'm trying to get it to, I was trying to get it to stream to mine, and I don't know if it did it or not.
Oh,
so
no.
It's okay if it doesn't, because I'll just take errors and then do it, whatever.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm good in this energy.
I can see we've got people watching already because this is a live show. Hi, by the way. Let us know where you're listening in from, because we'd like to say hello, and also hear a bit about your story, like where is Mars in your chart, where's your ascendant, and where's this Mars Cazimi going to sit in your chart. This is just an exploration, and I think a bit of a brainstorm as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see
what comes from spirit, what we get from all of this. Yeah,
absolutely. Before we get going, I just want to say hello to a good friend Shannon in Texas. Hey y'all, how you doing? Thanks for joining us, Shannon. I hope you're feeling well. Tell us a bit about your practice of astrology, how you do it, just so that people know. Yeah, and give me the proper channel title, so because I think I might have
it's just under my name, Kimberly Crow, and then that little, how YouTube makes you have the like a little thing there at the whatever, and it is I Am Kimberly Crow, and I'm on Instagram as I Am Kimberly Crow. I tried to do after I couldn't get just Kimberly Crow, then I tried to do all of them as I Am Kimberly Crow, which is interesting because my membership and my business name is Inner Awakened Mastery, which is the I Am. Like spirit gave me that name. They were like, we have a name for you. Look at the initials. So I was like, okay, I can just use the I Am with everything.
That's really good. I love it.
So astrology wise, we've talked before, we've both dabbled with it forever. And I always would like sit back to other astrologers when I would hear, because they had done this and they had done that. And then I would be getting these other insights. And so I would not call myself an astrologer. I still have a hard time calling myself that because I have so much respect for people, and it's a lifetime study. And there's so many different ways you can go with it that it's just like, how do you even call yourself that? Because there's so much of it to embody, and then I would be on these summits all the time, and they would ask me questions about it. And I go, no, I'm not doing astrology readings. But then I would always talk about it. It's always just, I innately talk about it. And I have this connection to the planets and the transits that is just innately there for me. And I do think that's our Scorpio. I think it's the Scorpio rising energy that has this, winded to it. I mean, I feel like that's where it comes from. In for me is that I'm a Scorpio rising with that stellium there. And so I was thinking about that with this when I was looking at that calendar, and I thought, when did I first take my first real astrology class? I was looking at the years and how this added up to this.
Good point.
I want to see what this whole cycle is. And with the Uranus too. And so I was looking at that and I thought, that's interesting. And then I realized in the last 2 years, I really threw myself back into astrology and human design. And that's what I've done in this Mars cycle, that I was, I was sitting here like really throwing myself into it because it's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And when I was looking, how we don't ever look at our own chart, like we don't know.
No, I know. I've mapped out all of my Mars cycles.
I was like looking at your chart, and then I was looking at mine. I'm also in a Uranus square right now, and I hadn't even you were talking about your Uranus and what you were going
Yeah.
through with different things in your cryon. And I just noticed it yesterday and I thought, how could I like not notice that?
Yeah.
It's like,
It's so easily done. It really is easily done.
yeah,
I mean, it's
it's like,
like you go
yeah,
around to a builder's house and, they're really good at doing their job, but you go to a builder's house and it's got, a half finished wall or a load of unfinished projects. It's like that for us astrologers. I mean,
yeah.
when we start, we're really quite attentive, aren't we, to what's going on in our charts?
Yeah,
But
and I hadn't
yeah,
paid
I'm
any.
working
I
with
mean,
clients all
I knew it was in my moon. My moon is Taurus, so I knew I was
the
being
time.
hit really hard,
Yeah,
with it. But I would totally missed the square in my own chart.
nice.
And so with that, because when I was doing the research with this, I was looking at that and I thought, that's about when I really started honing in on having the YouTube channel with it. Because I've had a YouTube channel forever. I just did other metaphysical stuff because I
Yeah.
channel and speak light language and I've taught crystals forever. And I
Yeah.
did other things on it. And I would talk about, big transits when they were happening. But then this year I really started going into doing the astrology stuff.
Mm.
And I'm like you, I do it a lot intuitive. I use different systems. It just depends on what it is that's going on, whether I'm using Hosan or I'm using, Placis or whatever. I mean, I use different
Yeah.
systems for different stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think
Wheels work better for different things. And so that's the part of it. We're really all just making this shit up. And then we just which way we want to make it up.
love that. So yeah, we're on a show talking about forecast like that, and you're like, oh yeah, we're just making this shit up. Yeah, no worries.
But if it resonates with you and it helps you, then go with it. That's the way I
Okay,
look at it.
right. So I think we've got a feel for you, Kimberly. And to be fair, I'm quite like that myself. And looking back in the Sun Mars cycles, I can see that it was in the Capricorn one of 93 that I started studying, like formally studying astrology.
Yeah, me too. Mom was too. Yeah.
Excellent.
That was when I first took my first class, was around that time period. Yeah.
And Shannon's loving the fact that we're pissing ourselves about, how hippie-ish we are. I'm sure Shannon's laughing with us as well, actually. Anyway, so what is the Sun Mars Cazimi? Did you want to talk about it?
Oh, okay. Anytime when we have it's more known, I think, when the Mercury one and the Venus one happens because they're more frequent. And so it's when the sun
coming up in December, isn't it? The Mercury one.
Yes, we do have another one. We have a Mercury one like almost like Mercury retrogrades 2 or 3 times a year. It's like they happen more frequently. And I think the Venus one happens like once a year, every 9 months, something like that. I'm off with that stuff right now. And the Mars one only happens every 2 years. And it's when the sun and a planet are the same degree. They're conjunct with each other. That means they're standing together at the same degree. And so when Mars goes, it's like, so it's said, in the ancient teachings that is when the planet goes into the heart of the sun.
Yeah.
So it's a rebirth of that age, of that time period. And this Mars we're in right now is kind of an old Mars, so it's like this Mars is going, because where he's been cycling around, he's like every 2 years, he's in this cycle. So he's like farther along, the wheel on this trip. And so astronomy wise, when that happens, then he'll disappear and he'll rise back in January. Is it the 11th? In Capricorn. He will rise back in Capricorn. So during this time period, we're good, it'll be an inward journey for people, during this time period. So the cycle we're finishing up this week, we're in the last 2 or 3 days of it, is the Libra one that we've been in. And now he's going to go into the Scorpio thing. And, Mars, for Scorpio, Mars is Scorpio's ancient ruler. Pluto is the modern day ruler. So he's got, there's like a lot of oomph there, because that's what's been assigned to Mars. And this whole you know, as we made up the stuff with the Romans turning him into warrior god, it's like there's a lot of intense energy there, but it doesn't have to be that way, because when Mars is in correct alignment in your chart, in your life, in your heart, in your mind, it is the divine masculine action. It's when it's in shadow shit that it causes wars and takes things over and, you know, does all the stuff. And the Mars the cycle that we've been in, I was thinking about today, that Mars in that, because I call it the Cazimis, it's the difference in our accents. In Libra, that was kind of mean girl shit. You know, it's like shadow side of that could be like, yeah, because you know, sometimes Libra can have that little mean girl thing. It's like, so that was the shadow side of it. And when you look at that in the world and all of the tit tat stuff of these people that are supposed to be world leaders, and they're like playing mean girl stuff to each other.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I mean, it really is when you look back at it and you see that energy. And so also during that time period, you know, Mars cuts something away. So when it goes into this, you know, it's over the knives, it's over all of that. So it cuts away things. So during this last 2 years in this Libra, there could have been a lot of cutting away of relationships, what you weren't going to put up with. And so it can seem like, you know, you drew the Tower card and it's like everything's falling apart, but it's for the best. It's being cut away. And it's when we're in the resistance that it is, you know, it's such a struggle because we're still trying to hold on to it. And so with this Scorpio, you know, there could be some secretive stuff, things that maybe you've hid that's been secrets, and, you know, there stuff like that. There's going to be, and of course the secret alliances, a lot of things like that, you know, could be coming to light. So yeah, what do you think on all of that?
I like your description actually. You know, that, so like Mars, essentially, like you say, he does a cycle. I just want to say hello to Lone Star Gemini who's joining us. Hey, how you doing? Mars in Aquarius, 8th house, North Node. One of those kind of like kind of faces. It's interesting you got your Mars in the 8th house, because that naturally has a bit of a Scorpio theme to it.
Yeah, it's already in that house of the underworld and death and secrets.
we're gonna be sort of exploring all.
Oh, you know what? With that energy too, she may have some really during that time period. That's when you can get like you know, dead people walk through stuff like mediumship things and stuff like that. Messages coming. So that's a time that the veils can be really thin with that. That's the experience I've had this week. And I was thinking about that because when I went through that before, when it was in this cycle in 91 and 93, that's when all that started happening to me. And I thought I was going crazy because, you know, dead people were showing up all the time. And I went to astrologer, and it's like, and she was like, oh, it's probably your Scorpio. And look at cycles of Scorpio, and you're just going to have to put a wall up and tell them the bus stop is out here and you can't come into my house at any time and just start talking to me wherever I'm at. Because I mean, I was having things, I'd be in, you know, grocery stores, and it's like they're everywhere.
Yeah, I can see that would be a bit. I'm very lucky when I have things contact me. It's never like.
I mean, it was like I had this open door. It was like one of those revolving doors, and they were just coming through, and I couldn't stop it. And that happened to me this week. I had a friend, but you know, it's one of those off and on friendships, and you don't talk to him for 2 years, and it feels like you talked to him yesterday. Her dad showed up here and gave me a message, and I was like. And you know, it's like 6 a.m. and I'm waiting for it to be a decent hour to text somebody. And I was like, hey, call me when you can. Your dad has a message for you. And then I told him I would give her the message, but he couldn't come back and bother me again. It's like, okay, if she needs this, I will give it to her, but you don't get to just like walk in my bedroom and wake me up whenever you want to. So
that's an interesting thing, because like we're talking about Mars, which I think is about boundaries. And we're talking about Scorpio. Hello, boundaries. I mean, Scorpios are, you know, they are very, very receptive to stuff, but they also are quite good at putting up boundaries when they need to, hence the old sting in the tail. I'm quite interested in Lone Star. By the way, hello, Minnie. That's my daughter. She's watching. She's saying, hola. Nubia is joining us from California. Is it San Francisco you're in? welcome, Newbienet. Hope you're well. Are you watching from work? Hello from Foz, tuning in from Foz. Hey, thank you for joining us. Lone Star is saying, through dreams, my Mars opposes my Moon South Node. So it's really great that you've joined us today, because that's, this is likely to get a little bit sort of esoteric, psychic, and a bit woo-woo. Both Kimberly and I have got our Scorpio rising. I've got Moon in Pisces. We're both mediums. So that's awesome. Like, I'm fascinated. So you've got your Mars in Aquarius in the 8th house. So presumably your Scorpio is in your 5th. Am I right? Can I just double check with you?
That should be right, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's in our house of creativity.
Yeah. So, as we talk about the Cazimi that's coming up, I'd like us, in fact, let's just sort of introduce how we're going to do this. We're going to talk around the Cazimi. Kimberly's already started to explain it, so we'll go through that. Want to have a look at the progression of the Cazimis, just so you can get a real feel for how the Cazimi affects you in the next 2-year period. So it's 2 years and 1 month approximately. I think it's 780 days, is it, in a cycle or something like that? But it's 2 years and a month. And what happens is, Mars goes into a conjunction, exact conjunction with the Sun. And so it's happening on the 18th in the UK at 5:43 a.m. I don't know what time it is, presumably 6 hours behind or whatever it is.
Right. So everybody is like between, it depends if you're in Australia and wherever you're at with that. But yeah, it's like we're already in the window of it. So it's like between this, from now until the 18th is when these energies are really activating.
Yeah. And the thing with Cazimis, so obviously it's a conjunction. Now, often when you think of conjunctions, you think, yeah, great, you've got like the mix of the two planets and they're both working together. But of course, the Sun is the Sun, and the Sun seems to overpower things. And so in terms of the Cazimi, what's said or generally held is that when another planet is really close to the Sun in a conjunction, but more than 17 minutes of arc away. So, when you see like this is happening at 25 degrees 37, that's the minute of arc. When Mars is exactly there, that's when it's right in its Cazimi. And then there's a leeway of 17 minutes of arc either side. So actually it's going into its Cazimi from 6:15 a.m. on the 17th UK time. And then it's in it for another day. It leaves it at 5:30 in the morning on the 19th. So it's like a 2-day window, a 3-day window. And the exact point is early in the morning on the 18th from the UK. So it's worth sort of, checking it out. During that time, it's like Mars is absolutely in the center of the Sun, and the Sun is absolutely warming up everything of Mars and really sort of beaming it out there. But of course, when he's beyond those 17 minutes of arc either side, it kind of gets burnt up by the arms of the Sun. It's a bit too much. So that's actually seen as a bit of a weaker point. So it's the exactness of it that makes it so special. And I love how you described it, Kimberly, as you've got this 2-year cycle, and right at the end of the cycle, we're wearing out. It's a little bit like over here in the Europe, I guess it's the same in America. You get your car checked, don't you? You take your car in for a service, and before it goes in for the service, it's really knackered. It needs a tune-up. And then it gets its tune-up, and then it starts again for the next cycle. And it's like, that's where it's about us getting our motors ready. And you think of Mars, like what do you think of the key words for Mars?
Oh, well, some of those words that we used before, the action, it is action. And it can, with some of the other stuff going on, it can be erratic action. It can be action without thought with it. And Mars in Scorpio is a little different than Mars is in Aries, as far as that with the action, because I do think that it can be secretive action. There's there's a flavor to it with that, and the cutting away of stuff, just being done with it. It's kind of like done, and when it's done, it's finished. Of course, Scorpio energy can go back and want to hold on to regrets or to get even. It can be that kind of stuff. Oh, that would take us off subject if I bring this up right now, but I'm afraid it'll leave.
Go on.
I was looking at people, like people that, with some of the energies and stuff like that. And that last cycle when was October the 7th, and that's Putin's birthday, which is my birthday too, is how I know it's Putin's birthday. And he's got it scares me when I look at his chart because I realize what a psychic AF he really is. Because he's got so much stuff similar to mine.
Really?
And that's when it's like that. The reason I'm bringing that up is not to be political, but the example of the energy when it's in that warring, taking over, the revenge thing, waiting years, to come back and to get revenge with stuff. So
you're talking about that in terms of when Mars is in the sign of Scorpio?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there can be that if you use it for the shadow side. I mean, it can be that kind of energy that comes up. So if we're aware of this, then, use it for the divine action, connect to that part of that and use it as the divine action. Mm. So I think that that's the part of us being aware of this is to know it and and to release the other. So what else? Of course, Mars has got labeled as the warrior, and I don't like to call him that. I'd rather see him as sustainability. that correct action brings sustainability.
I mean, I'm always fascinated by the mythology, but I always like to apply it. By the way, Lone Star is saying that's JFK's birthday, which is a pretty good birthday to have.
Know that.
No, I thought he was a Sagittarius actually. Oh no, that's Junior, isn't it? Sorry, I'm thinking of Junior there. I think I've got a bit of a crush on him, to be fair. Jeanette is saying, so if my Mars is in Libra, can I just be unbothered? I'm in Oakland across the bridge from San Fran. That's cool. Thanks for joining us. Nubianette saying Mars in Libra, I can be bothered if it's fun. That's interesting. Is that your birthday, Lone Star? The 29th of May.
Mars and Libra shoot that last 2 years. It'd be interesting to know if you felt what's the big changes that during that 2-year cycle that she saw, because that would have been in her.
So we've got
did she have any relationships change or anything like that? Any major relationships that went through?
Well, we've got Lone Star, who's got Mars in Aquarius in the 8th house, and then we've got Nubianette, who's got her Mars in Libra. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll come and talk about this shortly. I just want to talk a little bit around the whole idea of how the Cazimi works and how it sort of really expresses itself. So we'll come back to that in just a second. So that is your birthday, the 29th of May. Very cool. Thank you very much for sharing all this information with us. So like you're saying, Mars, I love, there's 2 airs. Well done. Yeah, you're right. 2 air Marses. Where's your Mars, Kimberly?
It's in, mine's in, I was trying to say Aquarius, and that's not where it's at. I must want it to be there. It's in Cancer. My Mars is in Cancer. And that was the big, I had an experience with Mars. It was when Venus was in retrograde and I was doing journeys with her every single day. Yeah. And she would sometimes point me to other planets and say, this planet has a message for you. And that whole Mars being in Cancer, that's one of those, everybody parrots and would tell me when they would look at my chart from the very first reading I ever got, how it was debilitated there. And, and then they would say this stuff about how do you, they would say, how do you feel about your mother? Blah, blah, blah. And it was always some stuff that just didn't fit. Yeah. And then I kind of started taking it like I felt like I had a wet blanket on me, with action. And it was almost like I was letting that bog me down. Yeah. And when I did my own journey, when Mars came to me to show me who Mars really is in my chart, and that Mars being in Cancer is sustainability. And it's like he brings that to me. And it's like and when I saw my Mars in Cancer, he's a surfer. He like rides the wave. He's like this, he's got this yellow, kind of hair and these big sunglasses like
so far out.
Yeah, and he's like a beach guy. And so he rides the wave. And it's like, I'm not debilitated, just ride the wave. So that's what I want, people, what is it to you? And not what
Yeah.
is it that we're parroting or what anybody else
Yeah,
is
yeah,
saying. It's like,
totally.
what is the energy actually in your life? And that's experiences that I'm having with these archetypes right now.
Yeah.
And then I did a bunch of research on Mars, and then I saw that how, the Romans really, when they started warring, they turned him into the warrior god. And he didn't get that name until then.
Really?
And it's like the Romans aren't the boss of me.
Yeah.
Mars doesn't have to be about warrior. He can be about sustainability.
Yeah.
It can be that energy. And then in human design, in human design, your Mars is your desk work. It's
Interesting.
like it's what you do for your own desk work. And with my Mars being in Cancer, in human design, it's meditation. And I
Yeah.
will say to people, let me go think about that. I got to go meditate.
Yeah.
And if I go into meditation, I know what the correct action is.
Mm-hmm.
And if I listen to other people or get tangled up in it, then I'm trying to do action that's not aligned for me. But if I get quiet just for a second and go into, it can be that fast of a meditation. It's just about getting quiet.
Yeah.
I will know the correct action to go. So that's, I've been doing this forever. And I'm just now really embodying that just in the last, 6 months, really seeing what that energy is for me.
Mm. Well, we're getting loads of comments in the chat room, which is great. And our good friend Jasmina is joining us as well, saying, I see you survived the new moon. Looking good. Yeah. And there's loads of stuff coming up. So we will come to all your comments soon. I promise. I like the fact that you channel the planets and you kind of see them as people, or they come to you in kind of spirit form. Like when I'm looking at a chart, I feel like the planets talk to me, but I don't see him as a person necessarily. But right. I love your description of Mars in Cancer as being your super surfer. I agree. I don't think it's very helpful when people say, oh yeah, your Mars is debilitated or whatever. I don't think it's very helpful to learn that. I think we have a responsibility to help people understand the planets in their signs and for them to come to their own context for it. Like, for instance, my Mercury's in the sign of Sagittarius, which is, he's not very happy there. He's allegedly really impoverished there. But actually, I think my brain is okay. It works pretty well, but it doesn't tend to work in black and white and this is right and this is wrong. It tends to work
in abstract. I would think it would be, right.
I like to see a big picture and kind of juggle around with things, but I don't think that's any less.
You venture. It's like your Mercury ventures in it's like, oh, let's venture here and venture there and get a little communication here and a little communication there. So it's that kind of, yeah.
What I'd like to do, if that's all right with you, is to talk about like the last place that Mars was having his 2-year cycle. And for us to talk about where it was in our charts and how it was expressed, but also what we saw around the world. And actually, we do it for the last 3, if that's all right. We get a picture of how it moves and how it affects us personally and also globally, because I think that would be quite useful for everyone.
When we can look at it on a global level, because we all have that commonality that we can see that energy of that.
Yeah. Well, also
the experience.
I know with my abstract brain and your energy, I think we could just carry on like chewing the fat about everything. So I've like brought up the details of the last 3 and this one that's coming up this weekend. In fact, I researched it like a few days ago and went back as far as my childhood and was mapping each of these cycles to see what was going on in each one, to get a real feel. Because I think as astrologers, we get the chance to practice our cycles, don't we? We get the chance to find out like what happened in the past. Like, let's find out what happened in the past, like work out what our coding is, crack our coding, and then we can see what's going to happen in the future for us or get a real good idea. And I did this, with all my Venus cycles as well. And I found it really, really useful. So that's the only reason I was bringing it up. So, we've got that as a tool, really. I can see Lone Star is got things to do, but she's going to come back later. So thank you. I just assumed you were a woman there, so forgive me if I've got that wrong. This is me calling you she, but thank you for joining us. And we will talk about your placement as well. Irene's here as well. Hello, all here. Mars retrograde in the 12th in Aries. Aries is also my rising. Good vibes. Yes. In fact, what would you say about that, Kimberly? You know, for people who have their Mars in the sign of Scorpio or Aries, or who have their ascendant in Aries or Scorpio, because they're both ruled by Mars. What would you say about that?
You know, that's what I have a client that I just did this with the other day. I took her to go meet her own Mars because she, you know, because she was actually in the first astrology class I was in, and then she became my client from that, you know, with other things. And so she'd always had this energy put over her because of that Mars, that she was, you know, a warrior. She was a fighter. She, you know, caused problems, and she started believing it about herself. And so don't take that in, because I had her to go to him. You know, I call Mars a he. It feels like it's more masculine energy.
Yeah, I would say that.
And to find out who that really was in her life. And then when she saw how much support and the strength that Mars had given her, you know, it gave her this endurance and sustainability to go through the challenges that she had in life. So I think that it doesn't have to be all of that other stuff. You know, it's like, what has Mars, if you look at Mars and you understand the endurance that in that, you know, to cut away and to go for it kind of energy. So I think it can be that, you know. Do you agree with me on that?
I mean, I really think of Mars as a place of my spirit, my, you know, my indefatigable, like, if that is a word, you know, like my unbeatable spirit, that part of me that will stand up and
it can be the one that stands up for the underdog too. You know, it
well,
can be that
energy. My Mars is in the sign of Sagittarius, which really does that. You know, I do have a warrior archetype for sure, but not to the point of where it would, you know, I stand up for values. I stand up for truth, which is a real Sagittarian thing. And I see it as a spirit. I see it as something that lights me up, like totally. But like my Mars is in a conjunction with Neptune, and also my North Node. So yeah, standing up is a big thing for me.
I think it can be that energy and stand up for justice in the underdog and what's not just in the world, that it can, you know, that, and I see that, and that the willpower, but not willpower in a way is how sometimes it gets judged as egoic, you know, like the power to endurance, you know, it can be energy like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think of it as my fight for the truth. And, you know, in a sort of Sagittarian way, I won't ever do anything if it's too difficult. You know, even with my Scorpio rising, you know, there are times when I just think, okay, well, yeah, this isn't going to end well. And this isn't a battle I need to be in right now. However, I kind of park something and always know that it's okay to come back. It's always okay to revisit things. But I always
like to know how she experiences it with that retrograde too, because I would think with the retrograde energy, it's going to be more of a internal lifehood, not so much on the outside warring with people, but more of an inner, you know, in your
in fact, Irene's sharing now. She's saying, nice what you share. I feel indeed the endurance of Mars. He feels like my spiritual warrior part, fighting for freedom and truth. Yes. Irene, how do you experience the retrograde side of your Mars? And while she's thinking about that, I've also got Lone Star Gemini saying, last thought, Mars in Cancer, Tarot, Chariot, could be the spiritual warrior. Have you read the Bhagavad Gita? Have you read that? I haven't actually read
I've read parts of it. I don't know if I've read the whole thing. It's like, I do those, you know, I started books in the middle or wherever, like I just asked for the download and turned it to a certain page and go, oh, that's what I was supposed to get from this.
That's kind of how I read books too, actually. It's like I love what you're talking about, the Mars in Cancer as the Chariot. I really like that.
Yeah,
Because
that's
I,
kind
I
of what I saw with mine, and it was like his chariot was a surfboard.
New Binet is saying hard yuck,
Amazing.
embrace ease. New Binet has got a very strong Sagittarian energy, so that's why she's all about embracing ease as well. Irene is saying he mostly comes alive when I'm alone, very introverted. My son,
Okay, yeah, I would think that energy. Yeah,
Scorpio. So sun in Virgo, moon in Scorpio makes me feel more introverted, even with Aries rising and Mars as my chart ruler. So
yeah,
Irene, I
can see
would
that with
say
that
that
energy.
this new Mars cycle is really important to you, given that your moon's in Scorpio, you've got Aries rising, so Mars is the ruler of your rising sign and also your moon. That's pretty big. So we will definitely do a bit of a deep dive. Obviously, we're not going to look at your chart, but we can talk about how we think that's going to show up for you. But anyway, let's have a look. So I've taken this back 3 cycles. So like the cycle that was in 2017. Can you remember what you were doing in 2017?
When I looked at those dates, my granddaughter was born July 17th.
Yeah.
No, she's 11th. But she was a preemie and was in the hospital, and all that was going on during that time period. And then in the United States, we had the total eclipse came through in August. Right after that is when we had that big total eclipse.
Yep.
And so I was just looking at that because that's when I came back to this area. It's like I came back here, and I like left Sedona and came back here. So I left the sun.
Yes.
It's like I was living on the top of the, in the sun there, and came back here. And I hadn't looked at the 17 when I didn't go back and look at it. And then it's like, okay.
And where is that in your chart? Is that in your 9th house? Is that where it fell in your chart?
Okay, Leo is in my, not in my 10th house.
Mm-hmm. So where's your, because are you using whole sign or are you?
Yeah, if I'm using whole sign, but Leo's in my 10th house, and then it's right at the edge of it. So in whole sign, it's in my 10th house.
Uh-huh.
So
what about in Placidus? Because like my
I think it's still in my
in whole sign it would be in my 10th, but what interested me
maybe
about
it was not in it. I was thinking it was in my so and that would, if it's in my 9th, then that would have been actually I'd stopped my traveling and came home. It's like it brought me back here.
So that's interesting because in that cycle, so just to kind of like keep it kind of clear with everyone that's watching, and also to hear your experiences, the Mars cycle started on the 27th of July. That's when the Cazimis occurred, and it was at 4 degrees in the sign of Leo. Now, at that time, Mars doesn't appear in the sky. So Mars goes into what looks like he just disappears. So he's not in the morning sky. He's not in the evening sky. He's not visible. And so when Mars comes visible, what is said, and this is what I'm exploring through our astrology, and it'd be really great for you to explore it through your own or to share it with us. But when he came visible again, when he was first seen in the sky again, it was on the 11th of September, and it was in the sign of Virgo. And so what is said, and I've been testing this myself throughout all of my Mars cycles, all the way back to leaving school, which was like 30 years ago or something. I found out that where it was in my house and where it was rising, where Mars was becoming visible again, it really made some sense. So what's said is where the actual Cazimis occurs in your chart determines the kind of journey you're going on, what it's about. And then where Mars becomes visible again in your chart tells you a bit more about how you express that. So for me, this is kind of interesting. It's interesting you've got an element of travel as well. So Mars was Cazimis in my 9th house. And then when he became visible, it was in my 10th house. Now, during that time, I moved to Portugal. I actually emigrated with my family, literally just after Mars became visible. but I was doing my packing definitely at the time of the Cazimis.
So, yeah, new home. So you did a home thing
Yeah,
too.
I mean, we went to live in a completely different country. So we
Right.
moved from the UK to Portugal. It was my whole family. And the interesting thing is, I thought when I was moving over to Portugal that I was going to continue to be a stay-at-home mum. That's what I was kind of hoping,
Well,
actually.
and that's kind of what
Um,
I did, because I went from my nomadic 6 years of being nomadic and
yeah,
then back here into a grandmother, and that my granddaughter was
yeah.
like, she was my assignment. It was like, and I was trying to remember when she had to have her first surgery because she come in with complications and went through
Oh,
surgeries.
bless
And
her.
so she came in during all of that, so that's
Yes,
really interesting, and health stuff, and then it coming out, in Virgo.
yes.
So yeah.
Well, yeah. So yours had travel, mine had travel, and relocation, which are very sort of like
Yeah.
ninth house things. And then interestingly, we both had a change in parenting or a change in our role, our
Our
external role.
identity, who we were in our identity in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was in my 10th house. I'd been off work up until that. I'd been off work for 5 years, like looking after my children. And being like my husband was kind of providing all the money,
He
which
was
was really, really nice.
independent.
And when we moved to Portugal, it was more expensive than we were expecting. And it became really clear that I needed to go back to work. And it was the right time. Our kids were a bit older, so it felt safer to do that. And so in that 2-year period, I was sort of expanding my knowledge of things, learning a new language very slowly, and also studying more so that I could get back out to work. So I was like, upgrading all my skills and practicing, and also doing a little bit of apprenticeship. I was kind of apprenticing my work out there, you know. So that's kind of interesting that we both had a shared theme, and we've both got our Scorpio rising. Should we have a look at the next one? Oh, hang on, before we go any further, what do you think the themes of that time were?
In the
Because
world, that's what I was trying to, because I
yeah,
know, yeah, I was trying to remember what were because I was so much involved in family, and it's like what was
yeah,
really happening in the rest of the
I
world,
was I
because
was
my
really
world was all about what was happening, within the family dynamics. And
yeah,
I was trying to remember that there of what, because I remember the total eclipse happened. It's like I know
yeah.
that was like big ass energy that happened here and during that time period.
Mm.
Um, what did you come up with any world things? Did you
Well,
look at it to see?
I know. I mean, from a very sort of British perspective and a Europe perspective, during those 2 years, there was a lot going on about Brexit, about the UK
Yeah,
leaving
right.
Europe, and there was a lot of people, making like real strong judgments. So I actually found, like up until around about 2017, I had very firm liberal viewpoints of the world and felt very, like we must all care for each other, we must all look after each other, we're better together, we're much stronger, etc., etc. And during that time, I noticed that I was getting a lot of pressure from people who were very much of the same mindset. But I started noticing a new kind of energy coming in that seemed a bit like what you were talking about, the bad girl energy. And maybe that was more
Yeah, the
towards
mean girl stuff, yeah.
yeah, the mean girl stuff. That might have been more towards the next Cazimis. But I remember starting to feel very apathetic towards the Brexit discussions. A lot of people were saying, if Britain, if you vote to leave Europe, then you're anti-people, you're anti-European. And it was really funny because actually, if I had a vote, I chose not to vote because I was so apathetic. I chose not to vote, but had I chosen to vote, I would have voted to leave Europe, but not because I'm anti-people, not because I'm anti-European, because I think what they were voting on was to leave the government. The
Right,
British people were voting to leave the European governance and to keep their own sovereign currency. But I don't think that stops people being European,
right.
and I've lived all over Europe, and I consider myself to be completely European. And
Yeah,
I also,
not so much a Brit, more of European, yeah,
yeah,
like
but
a bigger kind of
so
energy with
it
it.
was weird that I would have chosen to leave it, but was also living in Europe.
Yeah,
But, I mean, that was when it really dawned on me actually that politics, you can never really find any party that ever satisfies your full belief system. And so I was just starting to come away from any kind of public politics and really starting to find sovereignty on my own and in my own belief, which is very much a 10th house thing, isn't it? Kind of finding your own authority, finding your own power. So
Right. And
I
that
knew
whole me
that
coming
was
back
going
here
on.
to when I'm looking at that coming back to this area, because I was still a vagabond during that time period because I didn't take this house. I owned it and my daughter was actually living in it, and I didn't claim it back for like a whole year. And so that first that I was still traveling. I would be here, but then I was still bouncing in and out and going and sleeping on other people's couches. I found out during that time period, they're glad that you come back. If you only stay like 3 days and then you go somewhere else and then you come back in about, 10 days, 12 days, they're like glad to see you again. So I was still doing a lot of that and traveling and teaching. And I was on, so work-wise, because I was on a lot of summits and I could work wherever it was that I was at. So even with that, I was still out in the lot. And so I was traveling in that way and, doing Zoom. And that was when I really started doing a lot more of that. I switched everything when I came back here. Before I'd had brick and mortar. And when I came back, everything was online and I was doing everything Zoom so I could be connected to more people worldwide. I didn't care. And I live in the Bible Belt and that was hard before. And it was like, I can sit here in my house and do whatever I want to. I don't have to tell anybody else what I'm doing. So it was a sovereignty in that way that I didn't have to hide who I was in this area because I had connections worldwide. So there was some kind of global connection in some way, in that way, that I had some kind of experience that way too.
Go on.
No, I was just already thinking about
the next one.
Then the Virgo energy and where we went with, worldwide with the whole, that was the whole situation time period with those.
I forgot to tell you about my the biggest thing that happened actually, more important than moving to another country during that Cazimis period, which I should say that like from 4 degrees Leo to 3 degrees Virgo crossed over my midheaven.
Yeah, so that's what I was sitting there looking.
So it crossed over. I always think when things really cross over one of your main points, something big's happening. And of course,
my midheaven is 15 Leo. What's yours there?
Mine's 25.
Okay.
So it was crossing that angle. And like the 10th house, it's not just about career, but it often picks up stuff about parenting and being responsible. I became a parent again, so I had my third and last child as well, which was obviously quite a big thing, because also we weren't really planning on having any more children necessarily, but all of a sudden I felt this new one coming in. And so, on top of a move, on top of going back to work, I then was also having another baby. And because I was going back to work, I started blogging. So, and podcasting and stuff like that. So it was actually really involved.
We were both doing communication out into a bigger world than our little world. No longer in the fishbowl. It's like, now I'm like floating out here in the rest of the world. Yeah.
It's interesting that we both felt a similar calling. Right, let's have a look at the next one then. So the next Cazimis was on the 2nd of September 2019 at 9 degrees Virgo. And then Mars became visible and it expressed itself through the sign of Libra. Now, this one was quite a strong one for me because the actual Cazimis is exactly in opposition to my Pisces moon, which is in a really tight conjunction with Ceres about motherhood, and also my Jupiter. So this was really in opposition. So the new Mars cycle was pulling me away from the home and motherhood in my 10th house. That's how I felt, and that's when I really started to work really hard. And then the degree that Mars became visible was right on my Pluto in the 11th house. And so during this period, this 2-year period, not only was I working really hard, but I started a membership program and started working on seminars and also on some expos. What did you call them?
Those summits, where
summits, I participated on a summit as well, which took a lot of my energy. So yeah, my energy. So here it was in my 10th house, and then my 11th. And so, and it was also pulling against the opposition with, all things to do with motherhood. So even though I was at home wanting to be a stay-at-home mum, I was working my ass off and also doing a lot of collaboration. It was a really transforming time, and really, really tough on me as well. What was going on for you?
That's why I was just looking at that. My Pluto is 7 degrees Virgo, so it was pretty much on top of my Pluto energy. And then my sun is 14 Libra, so it was still kind of
very, very close.
Yeah, pretty close. It was pretty close on that way. So I was like, how does, the whole world stuff happened during that time period, that we all went in to the one thing that every person on this earth shares, the experience that we all share. Every place, was somebody, you were affected in some way, even when you tried not to be, because I pretty much stayed out of it and was like, I'm doing my own thing. I don't have to be affected by this. But in some way you still were, and I was doing all my calls on my membership. And I kind of backed down from, well, no, I had some collaborations with some other people, because now I think about that during that time period. But there was, that whole overlooming energy of what was happening on the world, in the whole the big C situation that we were going through.
Yes.
And even though I could rise above that and see it from a huge level and not get caught up in all of the slinging and the, that everybody was doing with each other, because I had experienced, at the very get-go, where I woke up in the middle of the night and Gaia herself, Earth, said, I was like, why am I awake? Because, man, when I hit the pillow, I'm gone. And she was like, why don't you go look at this world situation? And it was just starting. And she showed me how it was literally a time for healing for her, that humanity would have never put itself in timeout, and that I was going to watch her heal amazingly. And if we took the energy of her experience, that we too could do that with ourselves. And that it was all about cleaning up the toxicity that humans were putting on Earth, and that it had to be done for her to survive. And she said to me, there will be people, there will be opportunities, as there always are, that take this and take it to the advantage. And there will be volunteers that will be leaving, even though it doesn't seem like that they're volunteers, but they have signed up to do this at this time period. And so I got that very early. And so I knew that was the big picture the whole entire time. And even though sometimes my little mind would get caught up in some of the, in some of what the opportunists were doing, but overall, I had that bigger view the whole entire time, and witnessing how fast the Earth needed that time to reprieve of everything, the toxicity that humans had done to her. So it was a healing time period, like other people can look at that as we were in a healing crisis, but I saw it as a healing on a global level for Earth herself. So with that being in Virgo, I mean, to me, that makes sense. It was a health related thing. And
and it was expressed in a very sort of Libran way, wasn't it?
Because and that
like these, like, let's do this together, everyone doing it in a very organized and diplomatic way, or that's what the narrative was, oh, this is all above board and this is all diplomatic, this is all blah de blah de blah. And the kind of weird part of Libra, or the no offense to Librans, because obviously you're a Libra and I like you, but the whole how Libra is seen as being really, really nice and really, really balanced
but there's that mean girl energy there.
Yeah, there is, because
and there was a lot of mean girl energy that started coming up during that time period.
Yeah, I don't think
I know light workers that still took sides and won't talk to each other over, and of course here we had, there was elections going on and people fighting over shit like that. And it's like fighting over two old men that don't know your name to begin with.
That's a great description. It's interesting because Libra is all about the scales of justice and all about
Yeah.
fairness, and all about, well, it's interesting that censorship came up as a huge issue at that
Yeah,
time.
huge issue during that time period. That's, that we all, I mean, on a global level, I mean, and that's it, getting over it, that humanity treating that shit in, because nothing happens on a global level that big that every being on the planet can experience something with it. It's like, yeah. And it was necessary for air to evolve. And sometimes, we don't understand it, that we take the medicine the hard way sometimes.
It's interesting that you talk about like the health of the earth, and like Mother Earth getting a chance to cleanse, because what I actually see actually happened, rather than everyone getting very healthy or very health conscious, is actually that lots of people got ill, but not actually from what everyone was supposed to get ill with. People got ill with nastiness, and
Yeah, exactly.
And I actually think that humanity sickened in quite a strong mental way there, in the separation that came up between people, in the loneliness that came up between people.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of people that have had reactions to things, lots of reactions to taking in things that are toxic to them. And there was a lot of talk about what you could and couldn't put into your body. So it's interesting that there's the
restrictions if you did or didn't put certain things into your body, really, and all of that.
But there's the idea of cleaning up Mother Earth and cleaning her and keeping her pristine, whilst humanity, and it's also been rolled out to animals, and the ideas of even treating vegetables and fruit so that they inoculate us as well. There's all sorts of, and the whole idea.
I think a lot of people did turn to that more so than they ever had before. Yeah. People were looking for alternative stuff with, supplementing things for themselves, and people that would have never went that direction. And of course, in the United States, and I guess it was happening everywhere, but really here, the whole Q stuff that was going on, and people going insane with conspiracy stuff, and allowing themselves to get so caught up into that, because somewhere in them, I mean, the whole energy of that. But that's, where do you take responsibility for yourself and your own health, and and take care of stuff? So I do think there was a lot of that. There was people that were doing that more so than ever had in some ways. That may not have ever, even taken zinc or whatever, echinacea, zinc, that they were looking for stuff. And with that, the whole censorship of that, because, I know one time I went to just look for like things for your immune system, and there was things you couldn't find on the internet anymore.
Yeah.
Like, what does echinacea do for you? It's like they had like taken, there'd been so much restrictions on different stuff, but those restrictions were on humanity.
Yeah.
And it was humanity's mind that were creating the restrictions.
Yes.
And what they had to fight for.
Yes. It was like we all created those restrictions or helped to enforce them.
Yeah. And for our own sovereignty in some way. The big picture of that was for that own, what are you going to partner with now? What are you? Yeah. So
I really think the Libra energy is like, we're ruling you, but with a silk glove. So it looks like it's all for your benefit. Anyway, let's move on.
That's one of the things I've always said about being a Libra. It's like, there's a part of me that can go from, silk to leather if I need to. Wow. Like, Libras know how to be manipulative. It's like, we know what you need to.
Yeah.
So there was that energy. Yeah.
Talking about from silk to leather, we've got the next Cazimi, which was in 2021, which was at 15 Libra, which was in my 11th. And then it was sort of rising, like Mars became visible at 15 degrees in the sign of Scorpio, which was right in my first house. So what was happening for you around that time?
See, that's right on top of it, because my birthday is October the 7th, and my Libra is, like I said, 14 degrees. Yeah. And it's so weird, because honestly, when I was looking at all of these in the dates, I thought, I don't remember anything that big significant happening in the last 2 years. The last 2 years has been, much more me just being an introvert and really not, I don't, because Libras can be too social sometimes, and we give away our energy to this and that social thing that we really don't like, that codependency that we don't really want to go to, but we don't want to hurt people's feelings, and we go to stuff anyway. And I didn't do that at all. It's like,
Yeah.
I've been so homebodied, and so, just doing my own thing with my art, my, what I want to do in astrology and stuff like that. But I did release a lot of what I don't want to do anymore. I saw it more as, okay, that works easy for me, and I've done it before, and but I really don't want to do this anymore. I just want to do what I want to do now. And it's like this, be on my YouTube talking and helping people in that way, not because I have to, because it's how I want to express myself.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I mean, for me, with this Libra, this was in my 11th, and then this was, Mars was rising in my first. I really went into social media, in particular, like YouTube and broadcasting and podcasting in quite a major way. Was participating on more, what are they called again? Those things you were mentioning.
The summit.
Yeah, summits. Working on that. And also I've been on quite a few channels, because my husband has a channel himself, and I've got 2 channels. So I'm not just doing astrology, but also doing interviews and things like that with healers and whatnot. So that really became something that became a much larger part of things. But given that the Cazimi, it was rising in my first, but starting in my 11th, like that 12th house, it almost felt like an intersected house. It felt like my 12th house, everything to do with my psyche and all that, couldn't quite come out. And so I spent a lot of time healing in that time. There's been a lot of mysteries for me to unravel that I've not really been able to get a handle of, that have felt quite personal. So I've done tons and tons of healing, and I've been absolutely super busy in terms of internal psyche work. Yeah, it's been quite crazy. I'm really looking forward to this next one, which is on the 18th. So this is in my first, and it's rising in my second, right at the end of my second house. What about you? Where's it rising for you?
See, what degree is it? Third. So yeah, same. No, it's right. Yeah, it's rising in my second. Yeah.
So I was checking back in.
My Capricorn is in Sag. So that's, yeah. Wait a minute. Third, 3 degrees. It rises back in my first. See, I've got used to looking at whole signs with stuff.
Yeah, no worries. Well, I mean, the last time,
if it's just 3 degrees, then it's going to be rising in. I've got where those splits. Okay, it's in my first house. I thought it was in whole signs. It's in my second house, but no, it's not. My Capricorn, that's Sag. I'm looking at Sag instead of Capricorn. So Capricorn, it will be in my no, it's going to be in my third house. Yeah, my third house.
See, I went back
so it's communication and all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, I went back and looked at where it was, throughout my life and stuff. And the last time it was here in this area was in 1991. Right. That was when I left school, and I left home, and I left the country. I went to France, and lived out there, got my first job. So it's like, for me, it was in my first and then expressed through my second. So it's like my personal energy changed through the job I was doing. And that became how I defined myself for a good few years. So I'm quite excited about where this is going to be going.
Yeah, I went through that whole different identity thing too, because my daughter was born in 91, a C-section. So, knives, it's like cut you open. It's like
That's pretty good.
get this alien out of your body. And then it's like, and then so I had that. And then in 93, I went through a sudden separation because I had been married for 13 years. It wasn't like, we'd been married for a long time. We'd been together even longer than that. And so I went through that separation. And when that happened, because it was like a shock to me, but honestly, that I was still working in the hospital labs then. I used to be a med tech. And my first thought was, I don't have anybody in my life telling me what to do when I can do anything I want to do. And it was like, even though I was like this scorned woman and I felt like I had to play this part for for everybody else, I was like inside giddy going, I can be anything I want to be. I have nobody in my life telling me what to do. And I went through that's when I went through my huge spiritual awakening. It was like, it literally, I felt like there was a concrete wall in my head. I'll never forget the day that happened. And it like busted out. I saw it like busting open. And then, other realms of dimensions started coming in, all kinds of things. I realized my daughter could see auras, and I had this magical child that I was learning everything that I could to have answers for her, and that was where, that was when all of that happened to me. So it was a different identity. It was a mother thing, and then being a single mom, basically. And then deciding that, no, I wasn't going to punch a time clock. I wasn't going to work in hospitals. And
that.
I was a bacteriologist. So it's like this whole, it was like I watched what antibiotics did to people. And it's like, I knew that firsthand. And so it was that whole awakening to that. And I couldn't be a part of that system anymore, and awakening to my own journey. And then, I quit work and went to massage school because I decided nobody was going to tell me what to do, and that I was going to be my own boss. And during that time period, now looking back at it, I can see the whole thing. And that, that was me answering a calling, because when I started touching people, I could see in their bodies and I knew things about them.
Yeah.
And and at the beginning I was a medical intuitive.
Yeah.
And then through, time, like things evolved. And around that time period, somewhere in there was when I did my first formal astrology class, all of that. Cause I was reading books and I wanted all of those things and, all that stuff. So
that's fascinating. I love how you've brought in the sense of willpower and the sense of this is what I'm doing and it's my way or the highway. Because funnily enough, in preparation for going into this phase where it's going into my first, I'm literally letting go of a lot of my business because I know what I want now. And it doesn't matter, if I'm worried about like earning money or whatever. I've got new things I'm wanting to develop. And
exactly, that's the way I was.
It's very, very sort of like determined.
Yeah. I mean, when I told my parents, because I had already quit a career job,
Actually, I didn't go to university. I was meant to go to university back in the 1991. And actually I said right at the last minute, no, I'm not going to university. I'm going to France. My mum and dad, their jaw went, ugh.
Yeah, I did that. I did that when I went off to massage school. It was like, I quit work and had it lined up and called my mom and said, I need you to watch Kelsey today. And she was like, why? And I was like, because I quit work and I'm like starting massage school. And I knew inside of me not to tell anybody what I was doing, because I didn't want, and I was like, if I have to go back, because I could get a shit shift in a hospital anywhere. And it's like, if I have to go back and do that, then I can, but I'm not going to know if I don't walk through the store. And it was everything in me had to do it. And then that took me on a whole journey of, of where I'm at now. And that was preparing those structures. So that's what I see with that Capricorn, that the time period that is like, we're preparing our structures. And, that with mine and yours, since we both have the same, with with that energy, that it's like, okay, this is, who I really am and what I'm showing up as. And that's what it feels like to me.
So Lord knows where we're going to be at the end of this 2-year period. But one thing's like certain, based on the past and probably what's likely to happen in the future, is we're going to get clearer onto our path in this Mars time. So I'm quite excited by that.
Yeah, that Scorpio energy can bring the clarity. It can bring, to really align to your own psychic truth, what you know in that, and align to that, and ride the wave of that, and like really connect into your own inner knowing. And and to trust that you're in that transformation, and that that you can walk through the dark, and that there's because you're transforming everything as you go. I mean, that's the Scorpio energy knows how to walk between the realms that way.
I like that. I'm going to have to wrap this up in a sec.
Yeah, I know. I was just looking at the time.
I can hear I've got a screaming child and in the background, and I've also got my husband. He's been managing the kids quite well for hours now. I do notice that we've got quite a few comments coming in, and I'm just going to read a few out. We did say to Lone Star Gemini and Irene that we would talk about their positions. Lone Star Gemini and Irene, I'm actually going to come back later and do another part to this, and I will talk directly to the details that you shared with me, and I'll make contact with you via the chat so that you know. So hopefully you'll get that. Also for you, Newbie as well.
And I'm going to be doing this because it's funny. We talked about this before. I'm going to do the same thing on my channel. I'm going to go and do all the houses, not individual stuff, but I'm going to do where it's at in your sign and what that is. I've already got it done, and we both were like, we said we were going to record this morning, and then we didn't. Was like, oh no, I've got to do other stuff.
Yeah. Well, we've also got lives. Jasmina is saying last Mars Cazimi in Libra was conjunct my Pluto in the first house. Last 2 years were all about personal transformation through new relationships I created within the astrology community. Interesting. Well, of course, and you're doing a fantastic job there. You're so visible and you're really, really collaborative. I really love working with you, Jasmina. It's really cool. It became visible on my Uranus in the second, starting my astrology business. Fantastic. And that's really amazing to have Uranus in your second when you're an astrologer. Really, really great. I'm just seeing. Right. So, yeah, I will come back to all the comments in here and answer it in my next show.
That is the thing that we have different in this cycle this time. From when it was in 91 and 93, because Uranus, where it's in Taurus this time, last time it was in, I looked that up earlier. It was in a different place. And then the whole Pluto too, the Pluto was in Libra then. And then it's going to be bouncing back and forth, between going into Aquarius. So that's how this is the same cycle, the same houses that you had in 91 and 93 for everybody. So it may be the theme, but that other supporting energies that are there are going to be in different houses. That's also going to, have a say so in the energy of how it, how the cycle's not exactly the same because of the other players. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's the thing that we have different in the big picture of the big, the big planets that are out there for the collective.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your time with me, and also to everyone in the chat room. But seriously, I really love that you are as homespun and intuitive and even wackier than I am. I love that we have a similar
relationship. For 2 days, I had all these notes over here and I never looked at them.
No, it's great. Yeah, I just think keep being you, absolutely. And it's really interesting to just see the pattern of how the Cazimis in Mars has moved through both of our lives over the last few times. And I really urge people to, make that connection between their own charts and the last Cazimis, and to see what their programming is and to see what's likely to come up again. Because I think it's when we like really observe things like that, that we really get close to the real passion of who we are, and we find ourselves in a place of real power. So thank you to everyone that's watched and everyone that watches in listening, and you know, watching again on the repeats later. Like I said, I will follow up on all the things that people have commented on in another live stream, but so much love to you all. Kimberly, thank you so much. So if anyone wanted to work with you and have one of your intuitive
I want to do your human design, and
yeah,
we're both 6'2" projectors, and our charts are so different from each other. But then there's a whole lot of similarities. So I think that would be so fun to do our human design and to look at it and then compare it to how that fits in with your astrology. You know, what like the whole thing with that.
Let me come on your channel. Let me be a guest on your channel.
Yeah, and I'll we'll play human design.
That sounds great. All right then. Thanks so much for everyone today. I'm gonna cut us free. But anyway, take care and see you on the other side. Lots of love. Ciao, ciao.